Welcome to the Books Between Friends podcast.
3 lifelong friends.
1 shared obsession.
Books.
From epic fantasy to page-turning thrillers.
We dive into the stories we love.
And the ones we just can't stop talking about.
So, take a seat.
Grab a drink.
And get cozy.
All right, friends. Welcome back. And speaking of cozy, what have y'all been doing to stay cozy these days? So, funny thing, since Ethan started Throne of Glass, it made me want to revisit that story. But my TBR is just too long. So I finally have been getting into the world of audiobooks. And so I have been listening to, first I tried to start with Throne of Glass, but I didn't have enough credits. So then I found out that my library has all of the ACOTAR books. And that's also another one of my favorite stories, another Sarah J. Maas story. So I've been listening to those while coloring on my iPad, and it's just been like a really nice, relaxing activity at the end of the day to, unwind and revisit one of my favorite books. So I made it through all of ACOTAR, and I just finished A Court of Silver Flames, which is my favorite book in the series. And I was texting Jen this weekend as I was finishing it that I totally forgot how much I did not like Rhysand in this book for most of this book because of the way he acted towards Nesta. And Jen had opposite thoughts than me about this. So we were curious, Ethan, what are your thoughts on Rhysand from A Court of Silver Flame?
I thought Rhysand was a little insufferable during A Court of Silver Flames. However, I do see where he's coming from at certain times, especially when Feyre gets pregnant. And like we're starting to talk about that, and then Nesta reveals it in like a sudden, passionate moment when she shouldn't have, and she even knows that she messed up. So I can see where Rhysand comes from most of it, but at the same, like, trust your wife, right? Like, trust your mate. Like she wants to bridge a connection with Nesta. Like, let her do it. And if she's willing to do that, why are you not willing to do the same? So.
Okay, so here are my thoughts. So why is it okay for Nesta to be such a horrible person to everybody else? Like, she literally is nasty to people. She talks down to everyone. She is just such a bitch to everyone. And I get it. Trauma. Hello, we're healing. I understand this whole book is about her healing and coming to terms with everything that happened in the war. I understand. I am not giving her a hard time about her process to heal. But why is it okay for her to behave that way, and for Rhysand not to be so protective of his wife, who he literally has lost everything in his life? His sister, his mom, and of course he's going to be a little overprotective of his pregnant wife. And the fact that, her sister is being like overly vicious and overly ugly towards everyone, I would react the exact same way. I would you're going to be a bitch to me, I'm going to be a bitch to you. Like, that's just how it's going to be. So for me, it's very justified. I think both sides are very justified. Like, I'm not giving Nesta any crap as to like, you shouldn't be acting that way. But if she's going to be ugly, then okay, I'm going to be ugly too. But that's just my personality too. Like, I give back to what you give to me. Like, if you're going to be ugly to me, then I'm going to show you my ugly side too. So like, for me, Rhysand being that way is only because he's being protective of his wife and his future like offspring. And he's just going off of how Nesta is treating everybody else. So that's what I think. Stephanie thinks it's totally uncalled for, but we just wanted to see what you thought.
Ethan, I'm so glad you brought up the situation where Nesta revealed to Feyre that her baby having wings could potentially kill both of them, and they were keeping her in the dark about that. I thought Rhysand was wrong for that, and it was like to the level of how Tamlin was keeping things from Feyre, and that's the reason she left him. So I didn't like that, and I thought that yes, it was wrong the way that Nesta revealed that to her because she wanted to hurt her. But I think it was way overreacting to threaten to kill her and have Cassian flee from the city with her so that he wouldn't kill her for it.
But at the same time,
that was an overreaction in my opinion.
at the same time, Nesta didn't give Rhysand the time or the space to tell Feyre about it. Like, yes, he absolutely should have told her. I 100% agree that that's something that, like, the minute he knew about it, that should have been like, hey, Feyre, let's talk about this. Like, you know, we need to plan for what's going to happen. I get that. But she gave him no time to do that. She didn't give him the space to do that. Like, that's a sensitive topic for anybody. Like, could you really sit down and, like, just automatically tell your husband or your wife, like, hey, you're going to die if this kid, like, because it has wings, like, we could all potentially die. Because remember, they tether their lives together to the point where, like, if she dies, he dies. So that's not an easy topic to talk to somebody about. And then for her to just, like, spitefully tell Feyre, because like you said, she did it to hurt her. She did it because she wanted to be spiteful, not because she was trying to be a helpful sister. Like, let's just be honest. And so to me, I'm like, no, I get it. He shouldn't have kept it from her, but she didn't give him the opportunity to finally come and talk to her about it. And so I'm on Rhysand's side on this. Like, I didn't like, this was not my favorite book. Like, I love the storyline between Nesta and Cassian, and I love that romance grow, and I love seeing, like, Nesta's character development, but it was not my favorite because of how Nesta was throughout the whole book. She got to be so nasty to Cassian, and yet he was very forgiving the whole time. Like, come on now. Like, that no, that's not cool. But
well, you know, I think A Court of Silver Flames in general as well is probably one of my favorite in the series, if not my favorite, just because I felt like all of the other books, they went through struggle, don't get me wrong, but it felt too easy sometimes that they would become victorious. Everything just ended up working out. And this one was a struggle from the beginning to the end, and the payoff for that reason was that much better, in my opinion. Like, I enjoyed the payoff towards the end. I enjoyed the payoffs where Nesta, like, just owned her power, right? Those are the moments that stuck out because it felt earned. Like, the other victories in the other books, just, it seemed really easy just because we were focusing more on the romance, of course, you know?
Right.
So, that's where I stand
like
on
I said,
and, like, suffice it to say, we disagree on this, me and Jen.
100%,
and so I was so interested to see what Ethan had to think. And I'm glad that you're on my side for that.
You know what, though? I'm not, like, discounting this book. I actually really love A Court of Silver Flames, and I really want to see, like, what's to come from the Valkyries themselves. Like, I love that trio of women. Like, that was such a badass moment. I want to see what's coming with, like, you know, with this upcoming, like, new war. Like, I want to see how the storyline takes us. Like, I really do want to keep reading it. So this one did not shut me down from this series at all. It just wasn't my favorite. So, and that's just something that, you know, Steph and I have always talked about, but I love Rhysand, and I'm like, we'll continue loving Rhysand, but I guess I'm a little boy crazy when it comes to, like, these books, so.
Hey, he's still in my top 10 book boyfriends, but just not from this
Ethan.
book.
Me.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
So, what's keeping you cozy, Jen?
After that heated discussion.
You know what, though? I've had a really tough week this week with work. And what's really kept me cozy this week, honestly, has just been quiet. We had a work conference all week, which I love conferences. I love learning. That's just who I am. And that's why I like school, right? So nothing against the conference itself, but after a certain point, you get to a point where, like, you're just done talking to people. You're done socializing. You're done just having to put up this pretense of being professional all day long. And I have just really enjoyed sitting and being quiet all week. And it's become very few moments for me this week because I've been so swamped with work and so busy. Honestly, that's what's been keeping me cozy, finding a time to just sit on my couch and just shutting off the world. So I really don't have anything specific this week to keep me cozy, but I have just been looking forward to some downtime and some quiet, and I'm actually looking forward to that more this weekend. What about you, Ethan?
Yeah, like, similar to you, this week at work was just rough, man. Like, it was tough. We've been texting about it. It's
Yeah.
It was just not a fun week at work.
Yeah.
And then you have things like you see in the news and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
all of that, I've been really leaning into cozy, right? And so
Yeah.
currently I'm recording from my parents' house, having a little visit, which was much needed. So that's been keeping me cozy, as well as, practicing my calligraphy skills. I've been doing that
I love
more.
that.
And that's kind of like my at night hobby that I do while I'm watching like Schitt's Creek or something. And then honestly, therapy has been keeping me cozy and sane. So I need that time just to kind of unwind, vent, and make plans and goals for life that is upcoming.
I have always envied your calligraphy. You have some of the best handwriting. Like, I remember when I first met you, I was like, you wrote that? I was like, those are your notes? Like, oh my God, you have such a really good handwriting. And then you showed me your calligraphy and I was like, that is so amazing. Like, I wish I had the craft that you had because it's just so nice. And it's just very eye pleasing. I don't know. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I just love it.
That's so cool.
I always took it as like a personal fail if I did not have a teacher that did not compliment me on my handwriting.
Oh my gosh.
From first grade
I'm the
to 12th
opposite
grade.
of you. I have the worst handwriting. Like, people consistently mistake my handwriting for boys' handwriting. And I'm like, nope, I just have big hands. Pens are small. It's hard to like... Anyway.
Yeah. No, I get it. I totally get that.
All right, you guys. So before we jump into our discussion on these next 10 chapters, I'm going to kick it over to Ethan for a quick spoiler warning.
Yes. If you're listening to this episode, we are assuming you've read through chapter 20 of The Nightingale, so there are spoilers throughout. Before we get there, we're going to go ahead and summarize what we talked about in last episode, which was chapters 1 through 10. So in that first part, we dove into the opening chapters of The Nightingale, beginning with a really poignant 1995, almost like prologue. We see this elderly woman. She's reflecting on her past as she prepares to move into a care home. And we get this mysterious trunk and an identity card found within with the name of Juliette Gervais, which is a hint at a hidden wartime identity. The story then shifts to 1939 France, introducing the two sisters of our story, Vienne and Isabelle, whose contrasting personalities and reactions to the looming war set the emotional tone of our story here. Vienne left behind because her husband was drafted. She loves routine, and she is always in denial that things, are going to get better when they're really not, at least for the time being. While Isabelle is a complete opposite, complete 180. She's fierce, she's impulsive, she's fiery. She so desperately wants to belong somewhere. And we learn through the family history of Vienne and Isabelle of why she feels that way. She sets off on a path of resistance, meaning war resistance, after being expelled from yet another school and rejected by their father. This sets her down on her path. As German forces occupy France, tensions escalate between the sisters. Vienne prioritizes safety and stability for her daughter Sophie, and maybe even sometimes a little bit of selfishness in there as well, even having to reluctantly house a German officer, while Isabelle becomes increasingly defiant, eventually joining some local resistance network to distribute some anti-Nazi tracts. These chapters lay the emotional groundwork for what we're about to dive into. So now, let's get into our discussion of chapters 11 through 20.
Okay, you guys, so much happened in this section. I'm so excited to discuss these next chapters. I think this is probably like the longest of the 4 sections we're going to do on this book. And like I said, there's a lot to unpack here. So we start out in the summer of 1940, and Vienne is preparing for the winter by expanding her garden, and she's been bartering for food with the neighbors. During this time, she's also noticing that Isabelle is sneaking away pretty frequently, but she just dismisses it and assumes that she's sneaking off to see a boy. And then Captain Beck, who is the German officer that's staying with them in their home, informs Vienne one day that he found out that her husband Antoine is actually in a prisoner of war camp. he also gives her a list of other men from Caribou who are also imprisoned. And this includes her friend Rachel's husband. So Vienne organizes a gathering of the wives whose husbands are on this list to let them know that, you know, where their husbands are at, and offers them some postcards so that they can write to their husbands. And during this meeting, unfortunately, one of the wives gives Vienne a hard time about living with Officer Beck because, you know, he's a German, and they kind of bully her, honestly, for even having him in her home. So what did you guys think about this part?
I mean, honestly, like, I was so devastated that, you know, Beck, he so casually just went up to her like, hey, madame, I just want to let you know your husband's not coming home, by the way. It was just so casual of him to go up to her and give her this huge, devastating news, knowing that she has been waiting for her husband to come home. She knows that she has been just on the edge of her seat waiting for her husband or to hear anything about her husband. And then he's just like, oh, by the way, he's not coming back. And neither are all these other people. So I was just devastated and like such a gut punch to get that news just from him, just being so casual. But I was also just more upset with the behavior from the women. Like, here Vienne is, she's trying to get these women together, trying to give them news about their husbands so that they're not just sitting and wondering, because I feel like bad news is bad news, but no news is worse news. And so she was trying to give them some kind of peace of mind to let them know, I know what's going on with our husbands. Here's what's going on. I know it sucks, but let's form a community together to like get through this together. But no, they turn on her immediately, all because it was Captain Beck who was the one giving the news and the one aiding her, right? And so I was so happy to finally see Vienne snap back and stand up for herself here, because one of the women, I think her name is Helene, was just like, I would have killed myself before I let one of them move into my house. Like, really? Really? And Vienne goes,
sure.
Would you, Helene? Would you really? And would you kill your children first or throw them out into the street to survive on their own? And so I was just like, okay, Vienne, like, I let's get that more of that fiery out of you. Like, hell yeah, say that to her, because you know it's not true. You would not have killed yourself if somebody showed up at your house and said they were going to stay at your house. Like, you know you wouldn't have. So why are you giving her such a hard time for that? Like, I was just so upset about that. And honestly, like, a little bit moment of relief knowing that Vienne did get to send Antoine a letter. Like, I completely understand where Vienne's like mixed emotions is coming from, like having to ask Beck for a favor, but also she just wants to talk to her husband. I don't know what I would do in that situation either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, like everything you just said, yes, I agree with. And I even wrote similar things down in my notes. Like, it was such the moment we knew was coming, but didn't want to read that, you know, her husband had been captured and taken. At least, you know, it's like the wind is knocked out of her, right? Like, this is the moment we knew was coming. It is that gut punch, and it knocked out all the wind out of her. What I'm frustrated with is that, yes, we do get that fiery moment. And yes, I did bristle when those women were kind of judging her, because they view her almost at this point as a Nazi sympathizer, right? Like,
yeah,
they need someone to hate, and Vienne fits the bill right now. And yeah, it's just frustrating. But what was more frustrating is, yes, we get that fiery moment where she claps back, but in her inner monologue, she is still clinging to that idea of safety above anything else, like what was comfortable. And I'm like, what is it going to take to get you to like to be a little more like Isabel at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need you to, like, at what cost does trying to cling on to what was in the past outweigh your dignity and your, you know, I don't know. It's a hard question, because you do have Sophie to think about, but it almost feels like sometimes she uses her daughter's safety as a crutch for it's okay to want this. You know, it's okay to not be afraid, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very, like, I struggle with that internally as I'm reading her. I'm like, gosh, I understand where she's coming from, but gosh, I really don't like her for it. But yeah it's a catch-22 there.
Yeah.
You almost want to like shake her.
Yeah.
That's how I
Yes.
feel sometimes reading her parts. So later on, when she's back at home, Beck asks Vienne to list all the teachers in her school who are, quote, Jewish, communist, homosexuals, Freemasons, and Jehovah's Witnesses. And he says that he has no idea what it's for. It's just, for like record keeping, and like nothing's going to be done with the list. Sure. And at first, Vienne agrees to write the list, and she leaves her best friend Rachel off the list, who is Jewish. But Beck knows that Rachel is Jewish, and he basically forces her to write Rachel's name at the bottom of the list. So, he pressures her to do it, even though she didn't want to. And then later on, in November, teachers from this list get fired from the school. And so, of course, she feels so guilty about this. And she goes to the local orphanage that's run by nuns to pray about it. And she talks with the Mother Superior while she's there about this list. And she kind of like confesses to her. And the Mother Superior comforts her and tells her, they would have gotten those names one way or another, whether she had written the list or not. They would have gotten those people fired no matter what. Mother Superior also tells Vienne, this is just the beginning of this journey, and she has to be strong because this is going to be difficult for her. And so after having that conversation with Mother Superior, she goes back home. But before going home, she stops at Rachel's to tell her about the list. And Rachel was upset to find out at first. Like, she actually, I think she walked away and like took some time to collect her feelings, and then she came back, and like ultimately she did forgive Vienne for writing the list. But there's such a hard moment, just so many things to consider. Again, we're thinking about like she has to think about Sophie with every move that she makes with having this officer living in her home. But at the same time, she doesn't want to turn in, especially her best friend Rachel. They've been friends since they were girls in school. So yeah. I can't imagine being put in such a tough spot like this.
I mean, this whole situation, I was cringing the whole time reading this, because what a freaking tough spot to be in. I can't even begin to wrap my head around what I would do in the same situation. You're caught in this damn if I do, damn if I don't moment, right? Yes, he's pressuring you to kind of make this list because unfortunately, he is the enemy, and you don't know what he would do to retaliate if you don't follow his rules. And then on the other hand, like, these are your best friends, these are people you grew up with, and you're about to give them over to the enemy. Even though he keeps saying, "Oh, he doesn't know what's going to happen." Yes, he does, and she knows that too. So she was just in a really tough spot here. And honestly, I cannot stand Beck. I already hated him from the beginning, forcing himself in their home, which again, I know that's part of war, and that's part of what the Germans were doing to everybody. It wasn't just him. But I feel like he's just manipulating Vienne. And on the one hand, he's trying to be really nice and sweet and giving Sophie chocolate in the middle of them starving all the time. And then on the other hand, he's manipulating her emotions to write down these names when clearly she didn't want to write them down. One, he knew that. Two, she left off Rachel on purpose, and he knew that too. So he forced her to write that name down, knowing what it would do to her. And then whenever Vienne finally has the guts to go and confront him at his office, she sees like a shit ton of food all sitting behind him. You're sitting here and telling me that I have been feeding you dinner at my table when you have a shit ton of food right there in your office and we're starving to death over here? Are you kidding me? So I just have so much anger for this man, just the manipulation behind it, right? But I do appreciate that there was a little part here where she turns to her faith. Like, to me, Vienne finally accepting some part of what's happening instead of just like blindly thinking everything will be okay. Like, she talks to Mother Superior about what was happening with Beck, and like you said, Steph, like, she reassures her he would have gotten the names no matter what. And that's why I think he was just manipulating Vienne, because like, yeah, he would have gotten the names. He didn't need her for that. He was just putting her in a tough situation on purpose. And I hate that. I hate him for that, And so I was kind of thinking, like, do y'all think that she did that to make her more submissive? Like, I don't I don't
Yeah, like
understand
it
the
was almost
manipulation.
like a power move.
Yeah, like
Because
I didn't
they
understand the
would've,
manipulation behind this.
yeah, I don't
No,
know. It could have
I don't
been.
even think it's manipulation. I think he's exploiting her because he's found her to be weak. I think he sees exactly what she wants, right? She wants everything to be the way that it was. And he's like, that is someone I can easily get what I want from. And
Mm,
so, yeah, I'm going to set up camp here, and I'm going to make myself look. If this is nefarious, intentions,
Yeah.
right? I haven't got as strong as a vibe. I still get the vibe somewhat, just if anything, because he's a Nazi, right? But I haven't gotten as strong of a vibe as you two. But if it is indeed nefarious, like he's not well intentioned, um, then it's to serve him well. Like, look what information I have just gotten for
right.
Germany. Like, and I'm gonna bump up into the ranks.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't see it as manipulation, as like exploiting, because he knows exactly who's living with him.
True. Yeah. I didn't think of that, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point, though.
So in this spot, I think it was a moment for Vienne of growth, right? I will still say not much growth is happening, right? Like I think the extent of this growth is that she realizes that her actions have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all she's learned here. She still wants everything to be just as it was. What I do feel for her, though, right? Because to your point, it is a no-win situation.
Mm-hmm.
She either doesn't give him the list and he knows she's being dishonest and now she has to face those consequences,
Mm-hmm.
or she faces the consequences with her friends, right?
Right.
Especially Rachel. But I do love and I'll talk about it more later, but I love the moment with her and Mother Superior, because whether I like her character much at all is beside the point. She has had to make some tough decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, she is basically a single mother during wartime. That's overwhelming for anyone, right?
Yeah.
Let alone
Yeah.
someone during World War II having to face that. And so she has had to make some really tough decisions when she hasn't had to make those kinds of decisions ever before. We're talking like everything down from, taking care of Sophie, cooking for the enemy, and finances, which she had never had to worry about before because it was her husband's responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's taking on all of that. And the moment with Mother Superior, she just gets to breathe. She gets to be a person that can come to someone else for help rather than always having to have the answers. And I found that so relatable. Like, how many times in our workday do we just get decision fatigue and we're tired and we get overwhelmed?
Yeah.
And that's not
Yeah.
even during crisis, right?
Right.
And she's having to do all of that, and she just gets a moment to not relax, because it's not a fun conversation necessarily, but she gets to have that moment where she gets to be vulnerable and just let down those walls for just a moment.
Yeah.
All right. So that happens, and then we fast forward to April of 1941. And now Isabel has been distributing the tracts for months now for the resistance. And, it's still winter, and so she's been struggling doing this on foot. And she even talks about, one morning waking up and she's got like this pain radiating through her legs, and it's just awful, And so one day, when she's in town, she impulsively decides to steal a bike that she sees that was left outside of a cafe. And so she just quickly grabs it and like runs towards the abandoned shop where the resistance has all their meetings. And when she gets there, she sees Henry, and Henry offers to paint the bike for her so that no one knows that it was the bike that she stole. But he offers to do this in exchange for a kiss. And so she agrees to this. And then they briefly talk about how, Henry mentions, obviously there's someone else. And, he would, if he could, make her forget about him. And so she's like, oh no. Like, so this is a moment where it's clear that Isabel is still pining over Geit, the guy who left her when they were supposed to run away to join the war effort together. But anyway, later on, she is eventually asked to go back to Paris by the resistance to help the resistance a little more directly. And she says to Beck that their father is sick, which isn't true, and that he asked her to come to Paris to help him out, because he's sick, and asked Beck to help her get permission to travel back to Paris to be with her father. Mm-hmm. So all of this is going on, of course, while Vienne is struggling with like her issue with the list and, her struggle trying to keep it together for Sophie while Antoine's gone.
So I'm going to have to go ahead and apologize to Isabel for doubting her, because I know before when we talked in our first episode, I thought she's very impulsive. I didn't think that she had it in her to actually do this for months, but clearly she's been doing it for months, hasn't been caught. She's been doing a really great job of being discreet. So I am so proud of everything Isabel has done so far. So I'm really happy. I thought it was a little unnecessary to add in the whole kiss with Henry. I mean, okay, she's still pining over a dude that she had a whole second with. Come on. Yeah. You're telling me you're still waiting for this guy who paid you no attention and basically abandoned you. So yeah, I thought the whole moment between Henry and Isabel was kind of a moot point, but at the same time, I guess this was the author's way of reintroducing Guyette into the story, right? Mm-hmm. So whatever. But I thought it was a little impulsive of Henry and very dangerous of him to reach out to Isabel at her house, because now he's involving Vienne in this whole thing. For all these months, Isabel hasn't told her sister what's going on. And like you mentioned earlier, Vienne thinks she's been sneaking out to see a boy. And now said boy shows up to your house, and now she's questioning, what are you doing? Why are you running away to Paris? What are you doing? And, she tells her, I've fallen in love and I'm going to run away with Henry to Paris. And Vienne quickly believes her sister. And I think that disappoints her a little bit. It even says, you believe me? You really think that about me? That's who you think I am? And that made me really sad, because it's I feel like I have a pretty good relationship with my siblings. Do we keep secrets from each other? I'm sure we do. I don't tell them everything. I tell them a lot, but I don't tell them everything.
Sure.
But it's sad to see that, Vienne quickly sees Isabel as this, boy crazy person who is willing to, abandon her sister and niece to go follow a boy, And so to me, that makes me a little sad. But, that there's a clear warning to her. Isabel tells Vienne, be careful with Beck and do not trust him. And to me, that's just foreshadowing that there's going to be even more going on with Beck and Vienne now that Isabel's going to be gone. Because like I mentioned in the first episode, I kind of felt Beck flirting with Vienne, and now what you said, Ethan, makes sense. I think he's just exploiting her to see what he can get out of her, right? And so I feel like that's just going to be more of a thing now that Isabel's leaving.
Yeah, this moment with Isabel, I love that we're starting to get more of her adventures, right? I don't know any other way to say that, but I'm not gonna let her off the hook completely about being sloppy earlier, because she was so very sloppy. But I will say that she has learned quickly, right? Because to your point, Jen, she hasn't gotten caught all this time, and that just shows how quick she's willing to learn and how important it is to her. And so it is important to her. She wants someone to notice that she's worthwhile, that she takes it seriously. I really it's a character in a book, but I admire her fierce dedication that she has for this cause, because she knows it's that important. When it came to the bike, I was so ready to hate Isabel for being so dumb to steal it, right? But like Jen was saying, she's become more sneaky and sly to pull something like that off. What upset me more, I guess, about it was that she was letting her emotions run her to steal it. She didn't steal it originally. Yes, it serves her well, but she also had a little bit of anger, going into it, because she was in this square seeing all of these Germans enjoying their stuff, and it just got to her, and that's what pushed her over the edge to do it. And I was like, oh, man, so we still have a little bit of that impulsivity, right? That's running our actions. But
Yeah.
I will say that moment too of like, man, this is what you think of me. Like, my heart broke a little bit. I was like, man, yeah, like, but I mean, to her credit, she owns it, right? Like, she doesn't let it bother her that much, because I think she probably thinks to herself, why would they think any different? Because I think she's very well aware of the image that she's presented over the years,
Right.
And so she can't really hold it against Vienne for feeling that way, because she hasn't given her any other indication to think any different.
Well, and
Yeah.
she can't.
And like, I was thinking Isabel's just been really lucky in these moments. Like when she was caught chalking the Nazi propaganda poster. Thankfully, it wasn't Gestapo that caught her.
True.
And then when she decided to take the bike, she had no plan for it. That was just an impulsive thought that she had, and she went ahead and acted without planning for it. She wasn't going to paint it if Henry hadn't mentioned it.
True.
So what
Right.
would have happened if she hadn't gotten lucky and someone like saved her ass, basically?
Yeah.
But thankfully, the whole idea of her just being impulsive and running off to Paris to be with a boy is a great cover for what she's actually going to Paris to do, because
Right.
it's still really, really dangerous for her to be doing this. So she uses it as a cover for what she's actually going to do. But I felt for her that her sister immediately thought that she would just like put her and Sophie in danger by leaving them alone with Beck.
Yeah.
And also do something so foolish, is what Vienne called it, by just running off to Paris during wartime, you know, while they're occupied by the Germans. So
She also can't say anything. So, like you said, it's a great
Right,
cover.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
what
now,
el-
right?
Yeah. What else was she supposed to tell her sister? She knew
Right.
that her sister would look into the whole sick dad thing.
Of
She
course,
kept that up.
yeah.
So
You're saying dad's sick? Like, what happened? I didn't hear this.
Yeah.
Come on. So, all right. So then we get another chapter that's set in 1995, like we did in that first chapter in the prologue. So now Julian drives his mother over to the care facility that she's moving into. And she's staying in her own apartment, and they've already moved her things in, including the trunk that she insisted to Julian in chapter 1 had to come with her. And then as they're getting her settled, at the end, Julian hands her a stack of mail that he didn't know what to do with. He tells her, I've paid all the bills for the month, but these are just other pieces of mail that I wasn't sure what to do with. And one of which was an invitation to a World War II reunion. So we get a little bit more context around this woman in 1995. What are your guys' theories on who she is? Is it Vienne or is it Isabel?
Okay, so I totally think this is Isabel we're talking about. Like, and it could be one of those things where like maybe it's too obvious that it's Isabel, and it could be somebody else. But like, let me make my case for Isabel. So the invitation to the World War II reunion is like, the invitation itself is what made me think it was Isabel, because it was specifically to a Passiers. How do you say that?
That sounds right.
Okay.
I don't know.
Passiers reunion. And so like Julian asks like, hey, what is that? And she says, it's someone who helped people in the war. And so like right now in the story, right, like in the Nightingale, we're seeing Isabel helping people in the war, right? Like that's her role right now. So it would make sense that it's Isabel. Now, we have read several books now to where the obvious is never the actual answer.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I think it's Isabel just for that reason itself. However, there is something that happens in later chapters that like kind of further solidifies it for me that I think it is Isabel. But once we reach that part of our discussion, I'll bring up my point again. But I also think that there is a reason why this kid, his name is Julian as well. Mm-hmm. But again, that gets like revealed later in the discussion, so I don't want to bring it up yet. But when it comes up, I will be sure to bring it up. So, Ethan, what do you think?
Yes, I know exactly what you're referring to because I also had similar thoughts. I also think it might be too obvious.
Mm.
The only reason I say that is because at this point, Vienne still has the trunk in 1941.
True.
Like, she's the one that has the
good
trunk.
point.
Yeah, and so it really is still kind of a toss-up of who it could be, in my opinion. You can definitely, everything that you said already about Isabel is immediately what I latched on. I was like, oh, it's Isabel. That's so cool. Like, we finally know. But also, it's only halfway through the book.
True.
Do we really know?
Yeah.
And so but everything you said and everything that I think you're going to say, I agree that those are reasons why it could be Isabel, but I still hold on to the fact that Vienne still has the trunk, so there's still that, suspicion there.
Well, and it could also be, I was going to say,
well, okay, I was totally thinking Isabel too, and I totally didn't even think about her still having the trunk. So now I'm kind of on the fence that, like, it could be either one still.
Well, it could be Vienne, like, remembering her sister Isabel.
That's what I'm saying is, like, at first after reading this chapter, I thought, oh, obviously it's Isabel.
Yeah.
But now, considering the trunk, I'm like, it still could be Vienne. I don't know.
You're right. It could be either or. I was so sad on Isabel. Thanks, Ethan.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's like we're in Onyx Storm again.
I know.
What's your theory?
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to, like, a lot of the times the obvious is just not the right answer. Like, especially from all these, like, different books we've been reading. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see maybe, like, part 3 when we discuss this. We'll be like, no, it's totally Vienne.
I'm sure it will be revealed at the end.
Of course, yeah.
But I like how it's going.
I would
it's just
hope.
giving us little tidbits.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. If not, I've got a bone to pick with Kristin Hannah. But we're only halfway, so we'll keep going. Okay, so then we're back to May 1941 in Paris with Isabel. So when she gets to Paris, first she goes to their father's bookstore and finds that it has been shut down. It's no longer open. And then she goes back to her father's apartment and waits for him. And when he gets there, she finds out that he decided to shut the bookstore because he didn't want the Germans telling him what to sell. But he is now working for the German High Command. So she gets upset about that. They argue. And then he's also arguing with her about moving back in with him. But she holds her ground and convinces him to let her stay in Paris with him. And so he finally agrees, but with a few conditions. He lays down some rules for her, which are she needs to follow curfew, collect their rations every day, get a job, and leave him alone. So she agrees to all of that. And then, as part of her work for the resistance, she's given a false identity. Enter Juliette Gervais from the identity in the trunk. And she also decides to reopen the shop, and that will be her job. So she's working at the bookstore, and one day when she's walking home from work, she finds a downed British pilot who's trying to hide, and she decides to help him out. And again, this is an impulsive decision by Isabel. And she tells him to meet her at her apartment, and then she keeps him there for the night. And then the next day, she takes him to where the resistance meets in Paris. And when she's there, they tell her that they actually have been working on figuring out a plan to get downed pilots to Spain so that they can rejoin the war effort. And she suggests that they should go through the Pyrenees Mountains. And so while they're talking about this potential plan to get the downed pilots out of France, Gaëtan randomly enters the scene again. He has apparently been working for the resistance in Paris this whole time. And then later on, when they talk again, he tells her that he actually had Didier, one of the resistance members in Caribou, watching over her while she was there. Later on, back at her apartment, her dad is waiting for her, and he reveals to her that he knows all about her work for the Resistance. And he has actually been also working for the Resistance himself this whole time. And so that's the reason that he is working at the German High Command as part of the Resistance. And he actually forges documentation for the Resistance members. So he's the one that forged the identity for Isabel. So, huge revelation here. And actually, he's also been the one who's been writing the tracks that she was distributing in Caribou. So, were you guys surprised? First about Gaetan, and then about their dad.
So much happens in these chapter. I think it's even just 2 chapters, right? And first it starts off with, I am so proud that she finally stands up to her dad. She's been so submissive to him. Every time he sends her away, she just kind of gives in and lets him do whatever he wants, right? And this time she's like, no. And it's because she finally is standing up for something she cares about, which is the Resistance, right? And so I love that she stood up to her father here. She got to stay in Paris. She continues helping the Resistance. Good for you. I love that for her. I found the whole Gaetan moment super random and weird. Has he been tracking her this whole time? Why has he been tracking her? Why? And you still continue to keep your distance from her, then why even show yourself at all, right? If you're going to just be no, there's nothing between us, but then why show yourself? Why show your face, right? And also, what is his role in the Resistance? That wasn't super clear to me either. But I knew one thing for sure out of this whole situation. Ethan called it. He totally called it. We were going to see Gaetan again. So here he is, being a freaking weirdo. I'm not a fan because it's you're over here giving false hope to a woman. You kiss her, you leave her, hoping for more. Then you show up. But no, we can't be together. We can't do anything. You got to be careful and whatever. I cannot stand guys who are so fucking wishy-washy. I just can't. But this is another moment that kind of solidifies for me what we were talking about before about the prologue. Because when we were reading the prologue, the woman picks up the card that says Juliet Gervais. And that kind of starts this whole background history, right? And so now we know Isabel is Juliet. So it could be that it's Isabel remembering her time in the war and how she assisted everybody and how she aided all these people. Or now that Ethan said what he said, now it could be where Vianne is thinking about all the things that her sister did as Juliet. So now I have no idea. I really thought it solidified that it was Isabel. But I do love that she's yes, she was impulsive in helping that British man, but she's just doing what the Resistance members are doing as well. She's helping people get back to safety so that they can keep fighting for France. And I love that for her because that is what she's trying to do. She's not just a courier. She's not just a person that is she's trying to be more, right? I was so relieved to know that her dad was a good person. I'm not saying he was a bad person before, but I feel there's finally going to be that healing moment for them where it's you have been doing so much good without us knowing, and this is why you've been kind of keeping your distance from all of us because you didn't want us to be a part of this world, right? And so I was so happy to know that her dad was part of the Resistance and that he's been the one actually writing the tracks that she's been distributing. So such a great moment for Isabel, but it was a great moment reading about it, right? I was wow, I did not see that coming. I really just painted her dad as a really bad person. But now I can kind of see why she would have named her son Julian, right? Because there's this healing moment here that's happening. And so I can kind of see how that redeems him for everything that he did.
Yeah. So I don't know if I necessarily think that it's going to be lovey-dovey between them now, or I think this moment shows more of just mutual respect between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because even he says, he was I was not a good father. I'm not a good father, but he's doing this. He's not working for German High Command because, he's weak. He's actually a great man of strength. Right. And that's what Isabel latched onto. She's yes, this is a good moment for her because she was oh, thank God. It was almost like a relief. Thank God you're not this spineless man, right? You're trying to resist. Let's work together. And I can't say that I was necessarily surprised that this would be happening. I was surprised that he was actually already in the resistance. I thought he might have joined her once she slipped up somehow, you know,
Right.
because I think she's so focused on people outside that she doesn't even notice her dad, like having to hide things from her dad, right? And
Right.
so he ended up finding where the RAF soldier was hiding in their home, in their apartment, and that's how he revealed, or that's what he used to reveal to her. He's like, I know exactly what you're doing. I know exactly, you know, who you are, Juliet Gervais, you know.
Yeah.
So I thought he was going to find her slip up eventually, and he would have joined her. You know, he would have taken it as a moment. He's like, to brush off what he was doing, and say, enough's enough. You know, if my 19-year-old daughter is doing this, so can I. I did not anticipate him already being part of it.
Right. Right.
So that was cool to find out. I enjoyed that.
It's so funny you mentioned the way he found out about the pilot, because when she gets home, and I think he asked her, like, where is he? Or like, someone was here. And she's like, oh, no, what are you talking about? And he points out that there's dirty boot prints all down the hallway in their apartment. So again, like, this girl is just getting lucky, you know, like, she's not that stealth. It's kind of scary. Like,
and that, like,
somehow she's gotten away with it this far.
I know. And that her room smells like piss because he had to pee in there.
Yes.
Because
yeah, she brought him a chamber pot to pee in.
Yeah, and so we still get the sense that she's still obviously maturing and growing into what she needs to become in order to be successful, right? Because even her network of 5 friends call her out and say, hey, you're impulsive and impetuous, and that's something that, you know, is anti-spy. That's something that's going to get us all caught and killed. So please stop doing that.
Right.
And I love those moments.
About that.
Yes, yeah, they call her out on it right then and there. And I love those moments of her inner monologue specifically because they are so telling of her growth. Because when she's reunited with Geit, you know, she even thinks to herself, like, God, did I really tell him I loved him? Like, basically, that's the feeling that you get, right? Because she feels silly for having said that to him. Whereas before, older Isabel would have said it again, you know, as soon as she saw him. Because she still felt that draw to him, but she has that filter now, like, or at least the start of one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also just found it so weird and awkward the way he re-entered the scene, and then same as you, Jen. He was still kind of being standoffish. He didn't actually talk to her when they were at the Resistance, I guess.
Headquarters or whatever.
Headquarters, whatever you want to call it. It's another abandoned store in Paris. He followed her home, and she sensed him following her.
Yeah.
And then finally they talked and had a conversation, and he was still, oh yeah, you just weren't ready, but like, I had Dieter or whatever looking after you in Caribou. I'm like, okay. And like, just so weird. I don't know. I don't like
and also doesn't really apologize for like the whole situation.
Right. Yeah.
And then again, it's not clear what his role in this whole thing is. Like, what is his role in this? How did he even know to track her? Like, what? I don't stalker, right? I don't understand what's going on here, and
I'm getting creep vibes.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly. I'm just not liking him. I don't like that he's still banking on the fact that she still has some kind of emotion for him. I just don't like the whole situation. I don't like it.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. All right, but so happy about the dad. Yeah. That's awesome news that he's actually part of the resistance, because she was so upset at him for, you know, working for the German high command.
Yeah.
But it was as part of the resistance. And we get the sense that he's trying to figure out any details about the Germans' plans and whatever their moves might be next. And that's super brave of him to do, because that's so dangerous. If they find out he's part of a resistance, like, crap.
Yeah.
And that's why he sent her away to Caribou, because he didn't want to get her caught up in this.
Yeah.
It reminded me, Ethan, of your comment from our first discussion on this book about Isabel and their dad kind of being similar. I mean, they both found themselves working for the resistance, you know?
True.
So I can see that forging a better daughter-father relationship between the two. So now we go back to Vienne, and it's summer of 1941. And they arrest a colleague of hers, Monsieur Paretsky, because he has been distributing the tracts now in Caribou after Isabelle left to Paris. And while this is happening, Vienne asks, what's going on? Or like, why are they arresting him? Mm-hmm. And the German officer gets angry with her. And at first he's like, are you guys friends? And then he starts writing her name down, like, oh, so you're working with him? And she's like, no, I know nothing about it. And then because she had the gall to interrupt this arrest, he decides to fire her. And just before this, we find out that all of the savings that Antoine had left for her when he was drafted, she has run out of that. So she was already struggling to live just off of her salary as a teacher, and now she doesn't even have that. So this is a huge scary moment for Vienne. She already barely made it through this first winter in this war, and now she has no idea how she's going to continue on.
Yeah, and honestly, before I can get into that, there's another tiny section of a chapter that this happened in, but it really rubbed me the wrong way, and I just wanted to bring it up. But right before we read about Isabelle's part in Paris and the resistance, we kind of get this tiny little section on this moment between Beck and Vienne that I'm so freaking cringe, and I just hated it. But all of a sudden, Beck is acting even nicer to Vienne, and he pretty much says, everything will be different now that your sister's gone. Everything's going to be different. And I'm just wondering, what does that mean? Is he going to take more advantage of Vienne? I don't understand. But he, in this moment, starts acting like the head of the household. He brings in some fish that he caught so that they can eat fish for dinner. He even offers to fry it up for them. He sits in Antoine's chair at the dinner table after they had already confiscated a lot of their furniture, and sits at head of the table. He's making Sophie laugh. He's trying to be like the dad of the group. And I'm just like, the whole time, just cringe and angry about this the whole time. I'm like, why are you doing that? Knowing that these poor girls are starving. You're offering this tiny little fish. They're starving, and yet you have a shit ton of food that you still haven't shared. I don't understand your purpose here. If you're trying to be nice and trying to help them not starve, why are you not offering the food that you have confiscated in your office? Why are you not sharing that? Why are you trying to be the freaking dad of the group? I'm just really confused and angry, and I just can't even begin to understand how Vienne is feeling. So that whole thing I was really upset about. Mm-hmm. But when going back to Vienne standing up to the guy who takes Monsieur Paretsky, I was so happy that she finally stands up for something. Like, she questions it, she doesn't just cower away and accepts it. She questions it. So you're seeing a little bit more of Vienne getting a little bit more brave. But it came with consequences because she got fired. And you're right. She was already struggling with the fact that she was about to run out of money. And so now she has no money coming in. Plus, she ran out of the money that Antoine gave her. I'm really worried about her and Sophie now.
I know. It's so scary. All right. So then we fast forward a few months to October of 1941. And so after months of planning this route to try to get some of these downed pilots across the Pyrenees into Spain, Isabelle has now taken the code name, the Nightingale. And she goes off with 4 pilots on their first crossing to test out this plan and see if it works. And if she's successful, then she's going to call Levy, the resistance leader in Paris, and tell him the Nightingale has sung. So now we're off on this mission that is super dangerous. So most of the plan had already been set into place, except for one key thing. They hadn't been able to get in touch with Madame Babineau. She was an old friend of Isabelle's mom, and she lived close to the Pyrenees Mountains. And Isabelle suggested that they go through the Pyrenees Mountains because she remembers from when they used to visit this woman when they were kids that her husband or the men of this town would actually make this crossing on foot regularly. So she knew that they could find someone to help them make this crossing into Spain. And so her role was going to be to try to convince Madame Babineau to help her find someone to help them cross. And so she takes 4 pilots. She goes and visits her without notice, and she actually convinces her to do this. And she enlists this man named Eduardo to be their guide across the Pyrenees Mountains. And it takes them 5 nights of hiking in the rain and snow. And they're doing this at night and sleeping during the day. Like, this is grueling. Now, there's like several passages of them, like, and it's just like every night, wake up, barely eat anything, and start trekking in the snow. And it's just, I don't understand how they make it, but they did. They finally make it into San Sebastian in Spain. She goes up to the British consulate there and tells them, I've brought you 4 pilots that were downed in Paris, and we crossed across the mountains together on foot. She requests financial support from the British embassy to continue making these crossings, and they agree. So she's able to make that phone call back to Paris and tell Levy the Nightingale has sung. This was such a huge moment for Isabel, she's already been doing such great work for the resistance, but like now she's like doing this amazing journey across mountains and leading these pilots back into Spain.
This, to me, this was Isabel's turning point. This is where we talked about the growth. We talked about the things that she has done to grow, and even having some of her impulsive moments. But like, this is to me where she finally went from the impulsive, reckless girl to someone mature, compassionate, and brave. Like, nobody could, not even these men, like some of these men were like having a really hard time getting through this, like, and Isabel had to talk them through it, like mentally, emotionally trying to get them through this. Like, this is where she risked it all. And I think she even had like certain inner monologues and sometimes where like, oh, she would have naturally done this, but she knows that there was too much writing on it. And she had to sit down and talk to these men to try to talk them out of them giving up, because there was one moment where one of them almost gave up and they were so close to finishing. So I really love this moment for her. This is a turning point for me, for her. She accepts this big role and she does it. I mean, just reading about this whole situation, my feet were aching.
Yeah.
Some of these men weren't even wearing the right shoes. And I'm sure even though Isabel had the right size shoes, they still probably were not the right kind of shoes to go through this kind of hike, So you barely have any food. You have the wrong shoes. You're barely sleeping. You're barely stopping to rest. I mean, Eduardo means business. He was like, no, we're going. We're going. Barely gives him any time to rest. I personally get cranky if I don't get 8 hours of sleep. Like, that's 8 hours. Like, these guys were probably getting maybe like an hour of sleep for days,
if that.
Yeah, if that. And so it was just completely insane.
In the freezing cold.
Exactly.
It's raining and snowing the whole time.
Like, this is impossible, y'all. I could not imagine getting through this, but they did it. I was just so proud of her. I was so proud of her mission being completed. But there was one thing that kind of stuck to me that I was just like, okay, now it makes me a little bit more nervous for Isabel. But Eduardo goes, we did it now because they weren't expecting us. But now that they know people are getting somebody across these mountains to safety, like, they're going to be expecting us next time. And even with that warning, Isabel's like, I'm doing this again. I'm going to continue doing this. Like, and I love that for her. One thing, I don't know that we mentioned this on part 1, but like, Isabel's last name, what is it?
Rossignol? I don't know how to.
Yeah, that actually
Rossignol
means Nightingale in English. And so the fact that like that's her code name is because her last name means Nightingale. And that's kind of obviously where this title comes from, right?
Yeah.
But that kind of just put it all together. And it's just something that I wanted to mention because I remember that got mentioned when they were introducing the girls, where they said like the girls' last names were the Nightingale.
They mentioned their last name a few times.
Yeah. And so I love that that's what she uses for her code whenever she is successful in a mission. So
yeah, so cool.
Yeah, it was such a big moment. I was like, the joy and satisfaction that I got from reading her, say the Nightingale has sung. I was like, oh, what a moment like that.
So good.
I was, yes, I felt proud. I was like, look, like that is such a big accomplishment. You led these men to safety, right? During these incredibly dark times. Like you did that. You can claim that. You can add that to your resume.
Yeah.
And now you can see that the Nightingale is going to be somewhat of a revered name of a key, fighter against the Nazis. And I would even assume that she could be even public enemy number one.
Yeah.
According to them. So like she's going to build this reputation knowing how fiery she is. Like she's going to use that to fuel her. This was just a really cool moment. It was a well fought moment. Like this was hard fought to get here, and she did it. Like she had the resolve to do it. Vienne would have crumpled, So it's a clear, stark difference. Now, that's not to say that Vienne isn't fighting her own war in her own way, because she totally is.
Right.
But in this kind of task, that is not something that she could have done, at least at this time. We don't know how her character might develop later. But no, it was huge victory for Isabel.
I was just so inspired by her resilience, because Jen, you mentioned there were moments when even these soldiers that were with her were ready to give up, and they just couldn't do it anymore, and she was right there alongside them, encouraging them, telling them not to give up. And there was one point in time where one of them asked, like, "You've done this before, right?" She's like, "Yeah, all the time." And this is her first time ever making
I remember
this crossing.
that. Yeah. I think it was in the very beginning.
I was just so inspired by it, and I couldn't do it, you guys. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah.
I can't even stand being cold, let alone being out in the wilderness with snow in my boots. No, thank you.
And no food and sleep. That right there.
Yes.
Even if you can hike in the snow and the rain, that's one thing when you're fully fed, you're fully rested, and you have the right shoes on, right? Oh my God. Crazy.
Yeah, that just goes to show how strong her resolve is, right?
Right.
And you know what's true, what I feel is true. I don't think she would have done this had she not lived the life that she's lived, right? That is her fuel. That is what propels her to do this, right? Because she wants to belong. She wants to be worthwhile. If she didn't have that, I don't think she would have the same drive to make this happen.
Right. She wants something to fight for.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so then we come back to Vienne in Caribou, and this is in May of 1942. It's been a long journey, you guys. Vienne barely made it through this winter after losing her job, and she almost died one day after she fainted of hunger and hit her head. And she was so hungry and starved because all the food that she was able to get, she was feeding it to Sophie. She wasn't even eating at all herself. So thankfully she makes it through that. I think when it happened, they were right outside their home, and Sophie ran to get Beck, and then Beck told Sophie to go get Rachel, and she was fine, and she made it through this harrowing moment. But oh my gosh, just barely, And she had even been selling some of the valuables that Isabel had hidden in that trunk to barter for food for Sophie. But again, she wasn't eating any of it herself. She was just giving it all to Sophie. What do you guys think about this part?
I go back to how cruel Beck is being. Y'all, I'm over this man. I need something to happen to this man, really, honestly, because I'm just so over how he just is. First, Vienne kind of opens up to Beck and tells him her worries of, I have no money, I have been fired. And Beck is telling her that he has to go off for a while, but he'll be back. And then tells her, I promise you, your daughter won't starve throughout the winter. Why the hell are you going to promise something like that? And look, she almost dies because she's having to give all her food to her daughter so that her daughter doesn't die. What kind of crap are you pulling here? And then offers her wine after she faints and almost dies, offers her wine and says, oh, has anybody told you how beautiful you are? The fuck? What are we doing here? What do you want from Vienne is what I'm trying to get at here. Why are you not sharing the food? If you really are that compassionate and caring and you're worried about Vienne and Sophie, why are we not sharing all the food that you have freaking stored in your office? I do not understand. Okay. Sorry. I'm just honestly, that whole thing angers me. And then the fact that he shows up for dinner and sits and eats dinner with them with the little bit of food that Vienne has, like, you're telling me, and I already ranted about this, but I'm going to rant one more time. You're telling me that Vienne is making dinner for her and Sophie and still has to share it with one more person, all because Beck wants to sit at dinner with them? The freak, like, I
Yeah.
I don't understand. But
It's so messed up.
Right, exactly. Like, I just feel just this desperation Vienne is feeling here. She doesn't know what to do. And I felt the panic reading this, the fact that she has no job, no money, and your daughter is like starving to death, you know? Like, okay, I'm done. Sorry, y'all.
Okay, so yeah, you know what I just thought of that I may have a prediction for that I think it very well could be Vienne as the old lady, because the older elderly woman reveals that she feels hesitant to want to return for this reunion because it's going to make her feel all and remember everything again, right? And she has to remember the fact that she killed a man. What if this man is back? Like, what if she just has enough one day, right? What if they take Rachel and that's like her turning point, and like that's what pushes her over the edge, right? And she's like, enough is enough, and then she hightails it with the trunk and Sophie in tow, and something like that. I don't know. That's pure conjecture, but I could see it, rolling out that way, and I could also see it still being Isabel, but I think it could very well be Vienne.
I forgot that she says that she killed a man. I forgot that whole like tiny sentence that was mentioned.
She did.
Yeah.
She did. Well, I'll mention this later, but I have a reason why I think it might still be Isabel. But let's go ahead. We're pretty close to the end of this section. So that happens in Caribou. And now that the Americans have joined the war effort, the Germans are getting more cruel. And one day, Rachel tells Vienne that now they have to sew the Star of David onto all of their clothes. And she even had to use what little money she had to purchase these patches to sew onto her and her children's clothes. So now we know we have reached a fever point in this war.
Yeah.
And from all the media and stuff that we've all consumed about the Second World War, we know where this is headed for Rachel and her family. Yeah. So it's a really scary moment. And as she's trying to comfort her best friend Rachel through this moment, she started to see a little spark of some resistance from her, where she suggests, well, just don't do it. And then Rachel says, well, we have to. And then she's like, well, run away. You can go to the free zone. And Rachel reminds her, I need a permission to travel.
Yeah.
And they're not offering permission to any Jewish families.
Yeah.
But Vienne, I feel like this is probably a turning point for Vienne, hopefully, because I started to see a little bit more resistance from her, or at least something pop up when this is happening.
So I had to Google like the timeline of when the execution of the Jews started happening. So like obviously when the Holocaust started. And so it was called like the Final Solution, and it started in 1941. So like we're in May of 1942. So like it might have already started in other parts of the, of this war. And so it's just getting to France. So obviously, like you said, Steph, we know what's coming for Rachel and her family. I was really heartbroken here for Sarah and Rachel. Like Sarah and Sophie are like hanging on to each other just as Rachel and Vienne have. Like these are extremely hard times, and having friends to like go through it together is one thing that I'll forever be grateful for, because obviously I have never gone through anything these girls are going through, but even in my own hard times, the little times that we've had, like I have friends, I have you guys to go through that. And so I'm grateful that they have each other. Even Sophie has Sarah, Rachel has Vienne. I love that for them. But as we mentioned, we know what's going to happen to her. We know what's going to happen to that family. And I think to your point, Steph, you mentioned it. I think this is going to be Vienne's ultimate breaking point here. When whatever happens to Rachel and Sarah, that's going to be Vienne's breaking point. She's going to snap out of everything that she's been kind of hiding behind. She's finally going to spring into action. It could lead to her finally getting to Beck because maybe he's the one that takes them from her. I don't know, but I see this being the breaking point. So I'm curious to see as to what's going to happen on our next 10 chapters, because I think that's right now, these 10 chapters have really been focusing on Isabel and her growth and her journey. I really think these next chapters are going to be about Vianne and her journey and what she's going to go through, you know, having to see her friend go through this, right?
Yeah.
There was one part that I really loved that I wanted to read, and it was talking about Sarah and Sophie, and it said, the girls shuffled forward, holding hands so tightly they appeared fused together, and in a way they were, as were Rachel and Vianne, joined by a friendship so strong it was maybe all they had left to believe in. And I was just like, just made me want to cry, because that's all they have left. That's it, y'all. Like, they just have each other.
And these girls are like, what, 6 maybe?
Yeah.
Are they?
Both of their daughters?
I think so, yeah.
But they're little girls, you know?
right?
Like,
yeah. Like,
so
it's just
sad.
heartbreaking, y'all.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, we're all hinting at it. Like, this is obviously going to be her turning point, right? Because her husband is Antoine, but her best friend is Rachel. Like, and they are fused together. They do life together, and they have been trauma bonded now that their husbands are gone.
Yeah.
That connection is even stronger. And you're going to take, to your point, Jen, like, they are all they have left. And you're going to take that from Vianne. She's going to F some shit up.
Yeah.
I hope so. She's not going to go quietly on that.
Yeah.
I would hope so too, right?
Yeah.
Because we still see Vianne cling and turn inward. I hope that she would not do that in this case, right? So, like, what is it going to take? I've said that before. What is it going to take, Vianne? And unfortunately, I think this might be the thing that pushes her over the edge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we've already kind of talked about this, but like, I wanted to ask about reflecting on these chapters now. The sisters are taking very different paths through this war. You know, one has been like a fierce part of the resistance, and she's now establishing herself as a leader of this resistance and actually saving people's lives through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vianne has been doing her best to just like keep her head down and wait until Antoine gets back. But now we know he's not coming back anytime soon, and she's barely making it on her own with Sophie. And now whatever's going to happen with Rachel, we'll see how that goes. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it's easy to try to like discredit Vianne for not being as courageous and brave as Isabel, because like I said, you know, these 10 chapters have clearly focused on Isabel and her journey and how she's being courageous and how she's being brave. But we can't discredit the fact that Vianne has shown that in a very small way, like small moments of resistance, right? First, she stands up to the captain after Rachel got fired. Next, she turns to her faith, even after feeling like there's no hope left for anyone. Like, that's a big thing, you know, when you're finally kind of giving yourself over to your faith. Like, I think that's a big step. Then she's not fully allowing herself to depend on Beck. She's still resisting that. Like, she knows it would be easy to just like, okay, let me let Beck take care of me. She still kind of resists that and knows it's wrong, you know? And lastly, she stands up for Monsieur Paretsky whenever she knows it's wrong that he's being fired. So she's showing her small ways of resistance, which I think to me are courageous. And then of course we have Isabel, who's clearly showing a lot of bravery. She's leading these men. She's taking riskier moves. I love the journey. I love the journey she's on, and it's making me just really proud of Isabel. But I also wanted to be sure to like bring up Vianne and her little acts of resistance, because, you know, sometimes you don't have to be loud to make a difference, you know?
Yes, totally. I agree 100%. She has had those small moments of resistance, and I do think that they are very brave, because she almost acts a little bit like Isabel in those moments where it's just impulsive. Like, she just does it because she knows it's right. Like, and she clings to that. She's like, no, I will not. Like, I do want to know why you are doing this. This is unfair. This is cruel. And what purpose does this serve? You know, and so she has those moments. What makes it frustrating is that she has those moments and then she reverts back almost immediately. Like, she has that moment of strength, then she reverts back. Has it, reverts back. And so I think you're right too, that we're about to get more of Vianne. And when we do, we're going to see her moments of strength last longer before she reverts back a little bit, and then she's going to get stronger again. I at least hope that's where we're going. Like, I very much hope to that. Like, what if she even joins Isabel in one of her missions one time? How much of a character arc would that be, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy. Well, I wanted to share my little piece of evidence why I think the woman from the 1995 chapters is Isabel.
Okay.
So we didn't mention it in detail here, but after Isabel makes her first successful journey across the Pyrenees, later we come back to her and she is going off to meet two pilots who are hiding out outside of Paris to bring them across the Pyrenees. Mm-hmm. And one of those men is an American pilot who's from Bend, Oregon. And the very first chapter from 1995 set in Oregon.
That is true.
So I wonder if that eventually becomes her husband.
Oh.
And she moves to Oregon with him.
But it could also be to where the end
who
follows
knows?
her to Oregon.
With the trunk.
It's still not known, but I still lean more to Isabel for sure.
So do I, honestly. Like, I'm making all these cases for VN, but I still lean towards Isabel more than I do VN.
100%, yeah.
All right, friends. So that wraps up our deep dive of chapters 11 through 20 of the Nightingale. So now we're going to move on to the segment we're calling the underlined moments, where we discuss the moments that we love the most from these chapters and our favorite quotes. So to start us off, one of my two favorite quotes from this section. The first one is from chapter 11, and this is Vienne to Isabel after she learns about Antoine being at the prisoner of war camp. So she says to her, "So you see, I've never been on my own. That's why you're strong and I'm not." So even Vienne knows this about herself, that she has been the weak one, that she is the quiet one, the reserved one, the one that just keeps her head down and tries to stay out of trouble. And in this moment, learning that Antoine is not coming home, it scares her. And she was telling Isabel that, and Isabel tries to tell her, "Well, you've been alone. It's fine. You know, we've been abandoned before, whatever." And she's like, "No, I've never been alone. I've always had someone to cling to. And now he's not coming home, you know?" So I felt for her in that moment and understood feeling like I want to stay in my safe little bubble, but like everything's being ripped away from me. It's so scary. And then my second favorite quote was when Gaëtan and Isabel meet again. And he tells her, "I wanted to forget you." When she asked him, "Why did you leave? Why didn't you take me with you?" And so the reason I pointed this out is because I feel like that maybe softens my opinion of Gaëtan a little bit. Like in our first episode when we talked about why he might have decided to leave her, I thought that maybe it was because he didn't want to get her wrapped up in the danger that is the resistance and in this war. He wanted to keep her safe. And he even tells her that he was having people watch after her in Caribou. And so when she confronts him about it, he says, "I wanted to forget you." So he also didn't want to have any ties because he could also, as a resistance member, possibly die. You know, if he gets caught, that's dangerous. And if he has someone who depends on him, they could use that against him. So still not the biggest fan of Gaëtan, but I do kind of see where he was coming from when he made the choice to leave her in Caribou. And then one of my two favorite moments from this section, the first one is from chapter 13. And this is when Vienne and Isabel are talking about her going back to Paris, about Isabel going back to Paris to live with their dad. And she tells Vienne that it's to go have a romantic getaway with Henry. And she asks Vienne, "But you believe me?" And Vienne answers, "Of course." She shrugs. So foolish. So, you know, we already talked about this moment when we were talking about Isabel moving to Paris to do some more work for the resistance and how Vienne thought she was just, you know, being this foolish, lovesick puppy girl to go be with Henry. And also, like you, Jen, I felt for her in this moment that, you know, she was disappointed that her sister would think that, you know, this was part of her character to behave this way. So I just felt bad for her in that moment. But then in chapter 15, this is my second favorite moment. After Isabel went back to Paris and Beck brought Vienne that fish that he caught for her, and she cooks it for them to have at dinner. Sophie, when she learns that he's going to have dinner with them, she says, "He's eating with us?" Tanta Isabel would have something to say about that. Before she left, she told me to never look him in the eye and to try not to be in the same room with him.
Hello, Sophie.
So I thought this was such a sweet moment. Like, you know, we talked about it last time, how Sophie was like really looking up to her and kind of taking after her, you know, attitude and all of that. So it was just such a cute moment for her to like try to stand up to, you know, this German soldier being in their home. She was like, no, my aunt told me that he's not good. She didn't want to have dinner with him.
So for me, one of my favorite quotes goes back to that conversation that Ethan mentioned and that I mentioned earlier, where she gets to talk to Mother Superior. And there was a quote that that Mother Superior left Vienne with, and I think that really resonated with her, and it really resonated with me because I feel like sometimes I forget this too, where it says, "You're not alone and you're not the one in charge," Mother said gently. "Ask for help when you need it and give help when you can." I think that is how we serve God and each other and ourselves in times as dark as these. And it really kind of hit me because, you know, I have always felt like I needed to just kind of look out for myself and not ask for help. And I think that's, you know, Vienne forgot that she could ask for help because Antoine's gone. You know, now that Antoine's gone, nobody's there for her anymore. And she doesn't know who to turn to or who to ask help for. And so I love that moment where it's just like, you can ask for it and you can give help when you can, but also remember, you're not the one in charge. Like, God is, right? You need to, give your problems over to God and trust in him, trust in his path. A lot of us just kind of, I don't want to say a lot of us, like, at least for me, sometimes I forget that, you know? And so I really love that moment. I really love that quote there. The other one goes back to that friendship that I was talking about between Sarah and Sophie and Vienne and Rachel. And this is where they're talking about the Star of David that they have to wear. And so Sophie says, "I will wear one too," Sophie said. Sarah looked pathetically hopeful at that. Rachel reached out for her daughter's hand and held it. "No, baby, this is one thing you and your best friend can do together." And I just really felt for that because it's like, Sophie is just trying to be a good friend. She's just trying to be there for Sarah. She doesn't know what else to do. And this is her way of trying to show her, I'm here for you, right? And so I really love those two quotes. Like, those were really great, really stood out to me. Some of my favorite moments, one of them already got mentioned, like the Nightingale has sung. I love that it was on there that said that was perhaps the proudest moment of her life. And I was just like, I'm so proud of Isabel. Like, yes. You go, girl. But the other one was this tiny little moment between her dad and her. And I already mentioned it. Ethan, you already mentioned it. There was this moment where it said, "A look passed between them. In it, Isabel felt a connection that had never existed before. In him, suddenly she saw someone foreign, a broken man where a cruel, careless man had always stood." And I think you're right. Like, they're not going to have this like emotional moment where they're like, "Oh, I forgive you. I love you. We'll be a family again." Like, that's not what's coming. Like, it's a mutual respect, kind of like what you mentioned, Ethan. But but like, to me, that's healing for Isabel. Like, she can finally move on knowing that her dad wasn't this careless man. He wasn't this cruel man. He was somebody who was just trying to do what was right for his children. And in his own way, by being part of the resistance, like, that's what he was doing for them, you know? And so, like, yeah, they didn't have their emotional moment. They didn't have their little breakdown of, "Oh, I love you. I love you." No, she can finally move on and just be at peace that he's a good man. And so I really love that moment.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, book friends, so that was our deep dive on chapters 11 through 20 of The Nightingale. Next week, we are going to discuss chapters 21 through 30. So make sure that you interact with us on social media. We are Books Between Friends Pod on all platforms. Be on the lookout for our clips and make sure that you join us in our discussion through our comments. If you're enjoying our banter and our discussion, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and make sure you help us grow our podcast. So we would love to hear from you, and we would love to give a shout out to one of our Books Between Friends pod fan who left us 5 stars on our podcast. And they said, "This is a great podcast. These 3 have such great banter, and I love listening to their discussion. You can tell their passion for reading just from their discussion. Their predictions and theories section is my favorite. I can't wait to see what other books they'll do." So we would love to hear from you guys. Make sure you leave us a review, and I will turn it over to Stephanie.
Awesome. All right, you guys. So next time, tensions rise, secrets are revealed, and the stakes have never been higher. Join us as we unpack the choices, challenges, and quiet acts of bravery that shape this powerful part of the story. That's a wrap for Books Between Friends today. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next chapter.